The United Nations is taking a giant leap in its humanitarian intervention in Nigeria's northeast, with plans to alleviate the suffering of about 6.1 million people out of the 7.7 million Nigerians displaced by insurgency and climate change by the end of 2018. The United Nations Humanitarian Coordinator in Nigeria, Mr. Edward Kalon, made the projection while unveiling the integrated 2018 Humanitarian Response Plan in Abuja. The plan covers the infrastructure, health, education, agriculture, and water resources sectors decimated by years of conflict in the region. Our correspondent Ajuri Ngelale reports.
A desolate whistle in the wind, the natural echoes of an impoverished silence. Absent are the basic amenities in a blood-stained land, still reverberating the piercing cries of yesterday's terror. This is now life for too many in northeast Nigeria. Against this backdrop, the United Nations launches the 2018 Northeast Humanitarian Response Plan to alleviate mass hardship.
We will aim to provide food assistance, including through agriculture, to 3.7 million people in the three affected states in northeast Nigeria. Because grave violations of human rights continue to take place on a daily basis, we aim to support 2.7 million vulnerable women, children, and men with protection services. Medical care is also a priority and will be provided to 5.1 million people in 2018.
In pursuit of inclusive development, international actors seek citizen participation in the process.
Will Nigeria do something that we have never seen done recently in the world? And that is find the way, while saving a life, to restore that connection between citizens, each other, their place, their government, and let them return to their communities and their lives better than they were before they left it.
Local content is central to inclusive recovery of the Northeast and the nation at large, according to the federal government.
We also are prioritizing localization so that this response that we are providing now will be built on existing partnership between international and national organizations through investments in national institutions so that the capacity of national service providers will be enhanced to be able to fully take over from our international partners.
A nation in search of unity moves to heal a region still immersed in the trauma of yesteryear, to restore and recover one scarred person at a time. Ajuri Ngelale, Channels Television News.
Well, let's bring in the United Nations resident coordinator in Nigeria, Mr. Edward Kalon, for more insight on the response plan in Nigeria's northeast. Mr. Kalon, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us on News at 10. Well, the UN and other international agencies have been, lending a hand, in the rebuilding process in the northeast, and the UN has raised concerns about limited funds. How realistic is this projection this time around?
I mean, this projection is focusing on saving lives in the short term. But what we have made very clear to all stakeholders in the crisis is that whatever we are doing as humanitarians is very much short term, but we need more investment to try to start addressing the root causes of the crisis. The crisis in northeast Nigeria is due to prolonged development deficit, poverty, climate vulnerabilities that needs to be addressed, and it needs a longer-term investment and a longer-term planning horizon. But for now, we are talking about saving lives among 6.1 million people in the three affected states, which means providing food, protection, water, sanitation, health, education, shelter, etc.
Because many would say term as ambitious, the plan to at least cater for 6.1 million people. But what is your opinion right now on the humanitarian situation in the region for now?
Last year, we were able to reach 5.6 million people out of a total population of 8.5 million people that were affected by the crisis and needed humanitarian assistance. This year, the 6.1 is a reduction. You can look at the figures from that perspective. But we are certain that if we have the resources available, we will be able to provide the needed humanitarian assistance to this affected population. The 5.6 million people we reached had remarkable impact last year. The number of food insecure people was reduced from 5.1 million to 3.9 million people. We were able to provide seeds to 1.3 million farmers, and we were able to contain a cholera outbreak in northeast Nigeria. So we have built the institution, and we are going to embark on localization, which will mean building institutional capacity to be able to respond to this crisis. But I want to mention quickly that whatever we do in the short term and that longer term investment is required to address the root causes of the crisis in northeast Nigeria.
So just for the sake of clarity, is the target population by the UN limited to the northeast region, or are you going beyond this?
We are targeting the 3 states in northeast Nigeria: Adamawa, Yobe, and Borno. These are the epicenters of the crisis, and this is the area that is worst affected. But that doesn't mean that the government of Nigeria is only going to focus on those 3 areas. The government will look at the other 3 states in northeast Nigeria based on the ongoing planning.
Well, I want to thank you very much indeed for your time on the News at 10. We have the UN Resident Coordinator in Nigeria, Mr. Edward Kalon. Moving on to other stories, the House of Representatives has condemned what it describes as the manipulation of the country's justice system, allegedly by the Attorney General of the Federation and the acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. This resolution follows the consideration of a motion of urgent national importance by a member of the House on the recent indictment of the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Our correspondent, Lanre Lasisi, has the report.
Senate President Bukola Saraki arriving at the Code of Conduct Tribunal for the resumption of his trial for alleged false declaration of assets. The circumstances surrounding the case is the focus of this motion being considered by the House of Representatives.
Because that the same EFCC.
The sponsor of the motion draws attention to alleged attempts to manipulate the administration of justice.
Further concern of the fact that EFCC had previously issued a statement absolving Justice Umar of any wrongdoing and is now being charged and asked to try the Senate President with the tendency to give an impression that the game is being arranged to meet certain predetermined results, portraying our legal system as capable of being manipulated and should be of concern to everyone.
The debate that follows is lively.
The person who himself is alleged to have committed a crime cannot, under our law, cannot also be a judge for a case in which another person is alleged to have committed a crime.
The mere allegation of a criminal conduct cannot stop a judge from presiding over a criminal matter unless he's suspended. And in the case in Santa, he has not been suspended.
Can the judge in this circumstance be free to administer justice, bearing in mind that the same person who is prosecuting him is asking him to convict another person? Let us be realistic. Mr. Speaker, primarily and objectively, justice cannot be seen to be done in the circumstance.
So I put the question. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it.
With this resolution, the House mandates its Committee on Judiciary to interact with the Attorney General of the Federation on the matter. Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.